Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursaleen. Wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een. Wa nashhadu an la ilaha illallahu wahdahu la sharika lah. Wa nashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluhu. Allahumma la ilma lana illa ma 'allamtana innaka antal alimul hakim. Allahumma 'allimna ma yanfa'una wa anfa'na bima 'allamtana wa zidna 'ilma warzuqna fahman nabiyyin wa hifdhal mursalin. اللهم افتح إلينا حكمتك وانشر علينا رحمتك يا ذا الجلال والإكرام وصل اللهم على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله الكرام ولا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Jazakallah khairan for having me, and inshallah what I want to do is I gave a lecture, I believe it was sometime last week, on the crisis of knowledge and conspiracy theories, and then I started receiving emails on that subject, especially from people who favor conspiracy theories and seem to find some validity and some truth in there. And I just wanted to speak a little bit more on that note. It's important to understand, first of all, because there's no denying that, and I want to make this absolutely clear to everyone to understand, that there's no denying there being a grand conspiracy. There's definitely a grand conspiracy taking place. And the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala verifies that, affirms that many times over in the Quran, whether it is the shayateen conspiring against humanity or humanity itself conspiring against itself. And there are definitely grand conspirators and conspiracies taking place, and the grandest conspiracy of those is geared towards this finality of human existence, the eschatos, right? So a majority of conspiracies that are really out there are typically centered around this primary concept here, where the normality of things, how the world should function in a normal way, is always geared towards prosperity and longevity of the species, of humankind, of human civilization. And then there is an additional ideology that wants to sort of corrupt that and change that and alter it in a different perspective for a different outcome. And human nature is such that it requires, but within human nature is this concept of freedom, right? And how much freedom we have, how much freedom we are entitled to, and then where do the boundaries of that freedom lie as far as we are concerned. Now, then there comes in the concept of what regulates that freedom, or how is that freedom regulated? Because if it's left unchecked, then it could go in any particular direction or any general direction and then just spiral out of control. So the element of control is what then comes into play and says, okay, what controls the liberties of a people? Whether this is a community, an ethnic group, or it is, let's say, a city and its populace, or it is a country and its people, its citizens, or its humanity as a whole. Who determines how much freedom and where do the limits lie? And so fundamentally this comes down to who determines the laws by which humankind is to be governed and adhere to. So there is either the law of the heavens, which is the ordinance of God Almighty, or it is a law that humanity makes up on its own accord, what it wants or how it wants to govern itself. It's like a system that is designed by somebody, but then the system decides how it should operate. not the designer of the system. And this in itself is a fallacy, right? So those who are going on a fallacy, those who are running on a fallacy, are in opposition to that which is rational and sound. The rational and sound here being that mankind by his very nature recognizes that he has been created, has been designed, and therefore the creator, the originator of him and his species, is the one who determines the laws by which he should be governed. In much like the same way, if we look at the physical realm that we occupy, the physical observable universe, we identify certain patterns and certain behaviors, and then we codify those and call them laws, right? Law of gravity and law of motion, and so on and so forth. Well, who determines that law? Does the universe determine its own laws? Does it just make its own principles? And then when conditions change, does the universe alter its own laws to behave otherwise? And anyone who studied physics, even on a subsistent level, on an essential level, will recognize that the universe always abides strictly by the laws that are in place. So who places those laws? The natural conclusion, if we want to apply logic and rationality, the natural conclusion is that it is the one who created the universe determines those laws. So likewise, the one who created humankind determines the laws by which humankind should be governed, right? So that's the rational perspective. Anything that goes against that or is contrary to that is regarded as fallacy. And so anyone who is operating within a fallacy recognizes the fallacy. They know that they are lying. And then to cover up the lie, so long as their ambition is geared towards implementing their ideology, then it can be assumed by default that they will conspire against that which is the natural order, right? So a grand conspiracy, it has to be acknowledged. We cannot, especially Muslims, cannot live under the assumption that no such thing is taking place. There is definitely something taking place. And like I said, the Quran verifies this on multiple levels. The grand conspiracy of Iblis to bring about the downfall of mankind, of Adam and his progeny. The grand conspiracy of those who those who form an alliance with those among the jinn, right? To conspire against Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and his people, the believers. And then comes the grandest conspiracy of all, which is geared towards the last hour, where the manifestation of the Antichrist becomes a tangible reality. And preceding that, before it has fully materialized, it can be understood and rightly assumed that those who are working towards ensuring that this transpires, that this new age comes about, they will naturally be working behind the shadows, i.e. they will be conspiring. Now, conspiracy, it needs to be understood, there's a difference between a conspiracy and a conspiracy theory. Conspiracy as a word comes from the Latin word, which in the nominative state is conspiratio, which literally means an agreement or a union or a unanimity. And in a noun of action, it stems from conspirare, which means to agree or to unite or to plot. And its literal meaning is to breathe together. So essentially what it entails is that those who are conspiring, those who are performing the action of conspiring, have an agreement among themselves. There's something around which they are united. Regardless of their differences of opinion, maybe they'll disagree on certain things, but they have a unifying ideology. And that's what sits at the root or glues them together. There is a unifying ideology around which they are, or on which they are operating. So that's a conspiracy. Now, a theory is in principle formulated to frame an explanation for a phenomenon. That's the definition I would give it. I mean, you can look up your own definitions and see if that works or not. It is formulated to put into a framework an explanation for a phenomenal occurrence. In other words, it is to put an actor behind an event. And therefore, a conspiracy theory could be defined as an attempt to place a powerful actor behind a powerful event, which the event itself is ambiguous or vague, or its understanding or explanation is vague or ambiguous. There are missing bits which do not give you the complete answer. And the complete answer is the cause to the effect. Because you can observe an event taking place and determine what the event is, and then even examine how the event came to be. What were the micro events that came together piece by piece that caused that event to happen. But then now you're looking for the why question, which is going now more into the ontology of it. What's the backdrop of it? How did it happen? Now, the reason why this happens is because if you look, conspiracy theories are fundamentally guided by the English language. I mean, I don't know of any of these conspiracy theories in our contemporary age that have been formulated to such a degree or such extent or such magnitudes in any other language. I believe the only language it is usually discussed in is in the English language or related languages. But the primary I know is the English language, because a bulk of the conspiracies themselves originate from the western part of the world, whose lingua franca is English. Now, there's a reason why I'm pinpointing on this. If you examine, the English language is such that it's very slippery. You see, in Arabic we have a principle. كل فعل يحتاج إلى فاعل. Every action necessitates the doer of the action. As a concept, what that entails is that nothing can happen unless there was an intent behind it, right? And on a deeper, more metaphysical level, if you want to look, the evidence of that is إِنَّمَا الْأَعْمَالُ بِالنِّيَّاتِ. The Prophet ﷺ said, right? Every action is contingent on an intention. And the intention is formulated by a conscious entity. So if there is something that has happened, then it necessitates somebody made it happen. Or in other words, we would say that things don't just happen. There has to be a reason why. And that reason, that why reason, is what people are looking for as an explanation, the missing piece, the missing link. Now, if you look at the English language, you can actually get away with that. So for example, I can say the cup fell, or I can say he dropped the cup. Both sentences, as far as grammar is concerned, are correct. The cup fell and he dropped the cup. But if you look at the first sentence, that first sentence, or rather, if you look at the second sentence, he dropped the cup, you can see there that the fa'il, the one who performed the action, is known, and the link or the fault of what transpired, the event, the link can be established. He dropped the cup. There was an action performed that caused the cup to fall. But if I just say the cup fell, then it sort of hides the actor. It hides the one who performed the action. So the link, the causal link there, or the explanation of it, is concealed. So you would ask, well, who dropped the cup? It can't have fallen by itself. And then there can be an array of causal explanations, from mild causes to dramatic causes. But when it comes to now, I mean, this is a very small event we're talking about, but if you were to pick a large event taking place, let's say in geopolitics or something, the simple or the mild explanation, the mild cause, doesn't really intrigue as much. But if you have a dramatic explanation, if there exists the possibility that someone deliberately did it, then now it becomes, most intriguing because it opens up an array of further possibilities that the mind can investigate. Why did he do it? What compelled him? Is there an agenda? How could the cup have just fallen? Did he knock it with his elbow? Did he do it on purpose? Was he insane? Was he possessed by a jinn? And you see, and the causal link keeps going on and on. More links are added to continue the chain of the events as they may possibly have transpired. That's now where a conspiracy theory starts getting formulated. And the more complex the theory, i.e. the more causes and actors are established, you now have this whole epic drama or saga that comes out of it. You see, the more intriguing it becomes. And the more intriguing it is, the more it seems valid or reasonable, or it sounds like a sensible explanation. The more wise of those links that you can establish, the more you feel like you are getting more and more of an explanation, i.e., or you feel like you are uncovering more and more of the conspiracy. You are exposing it more and more by your finding of these whys. Why did he do it? What compelled him? Is there an agenda? Is it because of that? Or did you know it's linked to this other one? And then that one does like this, and then this third one is connected to that one, and then this was connected way back to this other thing, and then so you're actually trying to paint this bigger and bigger picture. And the thing is, you might be correct, or you might be correct in some aspects, but you're not going to be correct in the whole thing or in all of the aspects, because a lot of it is speculative. Conspiracy theories are fundamentally speculative. They are never based on concrete evidence. That's a fact. Whether you want to accept that or not, that's up to you, entirely up to you. You can delude yourself into thinking that what you have is actual proof or evidence, but conspiracy theories, by its root definition, it is a theory. It is fundamentally speculative. Only when it is proven beyond a reasonable doubt. If you want to take this accusation to any court of law and forget these secular courts, if you were to bring this to an Islamic court of law, if you do not have the proof, the evidence to prove the theory beyond a reasonable doubt, it remains a theory. If you are able to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt, then it would take on a form from a conspiracy theory to a valid conspiracy. Until then, it remains a theory. Now, I just wanted to make this clear because it's very important to understand when Muslims start getting into these things, it can become very problematic because by themselves, these conspiracy theories and the theorists themselves do not have anything to back their theories. In many cases, they might be factually right. But it's important to understand here that facts are not truth. Facts are established from the truth. The truth is independent of whatever fact you derive from it. Facts are subjective. And because they're subjective, facts are subject to change. And so whatever theory you build is subject to change. It cannot be taken as absolute truth. Muslims then try to fill in that gap between truth and fact using the scriptures. And this is a big mistake because they don't even know how to do it. They don't know how to derive the truth from the Quran or from the Hadith. and they make monumental blunders that alter their lives and the lives of those whom they propagate to. Many of these people, they've got, these YouTube channels and their Facebook thingies, and they've got thousands of followers. I mean, some have got hundreds of thousands, and all those people are being misguided by that misguidance which you put out, which you are broadcasting, which you have not even verified to be 100% truth beyond a reasonable doubt. You have to be very careful in that, because you have to understand, first of all, that conspiracies are limited to the human agenda and to human politics. That's their level. They don't go beyond that. They are on that level. There are only two races that are capable of conspiring, as far as the Quran tells us. As far as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlights for us, there are only two races or two kinds of creation, because in creation you've got aqili and then you've got ghayr aqil. And aqili is that which is animate and is capable of intellection. And then ghayr aqil is that which is inanimate and does not know how or cannot intellect. And of this, now you've got only two that are capable of this higher level of intellection, and these are the jinn and mankind. There are only these two. Now, as far as the jinn are concerned, human beings by and large have limited interaction with the jinn directly. They have limited interaction. There is a veil, there is a barrier between our two kinds. There are a select group of people among the entire population who do have this interaction. Some have it on a very subsistent level, like they have their little bit of witchcraft and whatnot going on. And then there are those who are on a much higher level. Their level of sorcery is like, it's way up there. It's something of an entirely different thing now. And so those are the ones now who have this interaction, and that conspiracy that I was telling you about, that there's a group of, the Quran acknowledges this alliance between human and jinn who are conspiring. That's that category now. But for the most part, the general population, you might even, if you want to guess and estimate on that, 99% of the human population does not have access to that other race. So we are talking about politics and human agenda. That's the limitation. That's where conspiracy lies. Because only human beings do this. As far as we are concerned, only human beings do this. Right? I think I mentioned this before in one of my classes. You don't hear about the mice conspiring against the cats. You don't hear about the bees conspiring against the wasps, or the monkeys conspiring against the baboon, or the buffaloes are conspiring against the hyenas. You don't hear about these coming together and conspiring against each other. It's only human beings do that. So we're talking about things that are occurring on a very, very mundane level. Even if you bring in now this aspect of higher level witchcraft and sorcery, which is definitely taking place, even if you bring that in, it is still pertaining this subsistent plane of this earthly domain. It's not going higher than that. It's still on the lowest of the low. So it's important to understand how limited that is and what is its nature. Because when you're now talking about anything that is on this earthly plane, then you are talking about information. It's not knowledge. We're not dealing with knowledge in this aspect. We're dealing with a realm of information, with a realm of particulars, with a realm of semantics, right? Because it's politics. It's subjective facts. These things keep changing. They keep shifting. And therefore they cannot be taken as absolute truth. They are only informative, and they should remain as informative. The mistake that many Muslims are doing are converting this into something that is of an absolute truth. And that is where they are failing. They're trying to take that, fill it in with as many links as possible, as many why questions as they could come up with, and fill that in somehow, and then take that and then sort of box it in and say this is the truth. And then they establish a belief in that. That is called ignorance. And the more you do it, the more you compound it until you end up being ignorant of your ignorance. And that's where many Muslims end up going into that in that direction. Because a theory, right, the conspiracy theory, like any other theory, is pieced together with bits of information from varied sources, different sources. There's something here, something there, and then it's just put together, it's pieced together somehow. And these sources do not have a coherency. You see, if you look at how a theory is established in the sciences, anyone who establishes a theory must be able to show a coherency of the sources from which the theory has been derived. Because the sciences themselves, each science works on its own platform. It's got its own set of rules. But then each science has a connectivity to other sciences, has got a coherency connected to other sciences. For example, you can take biology and you can study, let's say, the muscles and the bones and those kinds of things, in human anatomy. And then you'll find that those are actually connected to the science of physics, because there is a physicality to how these bones and muscles operate, right? You've got joints which act as pulleys or pivots. You've got muscles which have tensile strength and elasticity. You've got all these factors also. So there is a connection there. Then you'll find that physics has a connection to mathematics. Then mathematics has a connection to astronomy. You see, so they're all connected somehow. You'll find this, and this is where the coherency lies. So when someone's putting a theory together, they have to show this coherency, that there is a validity, because if this piece of the theory was derived from that science, then the validity of this piece in that science is such and such. And likewise for this other science where this other piece has been derived from. When people are putting together their conspiracy theories, they do not actually show that. They just take the information and they put it together, but they do not actually show or demonstrate the coherency of the sources. Now, after the coherency of the sources, you have to demonstrate the authenticity of the sources, which now it just makes matters worse for whoever's putting the theory together. But you have to understand now here, we're dealing with information. And so when you're dealing with information, there is a necessity that underlies that, which is a necessity to establish truths. It's there, it's in human nature. You have to establish truth, because the only way you believe in it is if you believe it to be true. So you have to establish truth. But the problem is, you're dealing with truths here which are subjective and are unverifiable. You know why? Because the shadowy actor whom you are pinpointing continues to remain in the shadow. In other words, you do not have proof or evidence that can prove your theory beyond a reasonable doubt. If you go to the courts and you want to file a case for murder, there are several things that you need to have in place. Number one, you need the murderer. Because if you don't have someone to accuse, then why are you, who is the case against? And then you need to have other entities alongside that to prove the murder. You need to have the murder weapon. You need to have the motive. So the murder weapon is the means, the motive, and then the opportunity. And when the police do their investigation, those are the things they will look for. The means, which is the weapon itself, the motive, which is what drove the individual to commit that, and then the opportunity. And they will cross-examine that with an alibi. You see, so that they can establish whether or not they have the right person. And then the case will move further than that. It doesn't get justified in the police station. Just because you caught somebody, even though they've got blood on their hands, and they're holding the weapon in their hands, and the body is right there in front of them, they do not automatically get sentenced on the spot or at the station while they are in the holding cell. No, the case still has to go forward and be proven beyond a reasonable doubt. So just because you got the information together this still does not establish the truth. It still has to be verified. It still has to be proven. So you cannot just come in and then make a conclusion to say, Hada sahih. No, you can't do that. And worse yet now is when you attempt to use the Quran, because this is where everyone falls flat on their face. If you look at the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in Surah Al Imran, He says, هُوَ الَّذِي أَنزَلَ عَلَيْكَ الْكِتَابَ مِنْهُ آيَاتٌ مُحْكَمَاتٌ. He is the one who has sent down upon you the kitab, and in it are ayat that are muhkam. And then he says, Hunna ummul kitab. These are the mother of the book, the foundation. This is the foundation of the book. These muhkamat. Wa ukharu mutashabihat. And then the others are mutashabihat. Now, mutashabihat, tashabaha is those which they are ambiguous they're not explicit in their in what they are relaying. There is some level of ambiguity, there is some level of vagueness, there is poetic language involved, there is metaphoric language involved, and so such ayats require a higher level of intellection. There is more effort that is involved in, number one, determining the type of ayah, whether it is mutashabiha. To understand that, there is a litmus test to determining that, and then going deeper and deeper into the language of what's being, because it is being delivered in a particular language. And I'm not talking about the form, right? We know it's been delivered in the Arabic language. I'm talking about the way it has been articulated, its execution. There is rhetoric, there is tone, there is emotion. These are not things that you can just get out of text just like that, right? You wonder why a lot of these, girlfriend, boyfriends, they break up over like text messages. Well, because they misunderstand them. And then when they come together and then they try to understand, well, what happened? This is what you said. Yeah, but that's not what I meant. But that's what the text says. But that's not what the person meant, right? Because you can't determine tone, emotion, these kind of things. You can't determine those easily from the text alone, from the symbol. You have to go deeper than that, right? So these are where the mutashabihat are. And then he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ, right? زَيْغٌ, which if you look in the translations, some of them will say perversion. And then others will say like deviation, right? And the origin of that is to avert, is to go off. So your heart is not on the straight path. It's steering off. It's being directed this way and that way. Because the intellect is looking for symbols in different directions to try and piece together whatever it is that it's trying to work out. And the heart is not in control of the intellect. Rather, the intellect is dictating what the heart should do. If you want an analogy of this, it's like the prime minister is telling the king or the queen what they should be doing, rather than the king or queen telling the prime minister what he should be doing, right? Who's in charge here? And we spoke about this in psychology, that sound psychology is when the heart is placed like a sultan in his kingdom, and the intellect is like his wazir, and the appetites are placed as the administration, the politicians, and the emotions, which are like the ghadab, anger being the most base, is placed as the defense. So you've got the national defense, and then you've got the national guard. The defense is from external harm, and then the National Guard is for internal harm. So that's the hierarchy for sound psychological function. But if the intellect is overriding the heart, then essentially you have got a weak ruler. In other words, you're not in control of yourself. Your actions are being dictated by your whims, or your desires, or your appetites, or your emotions, or your anything else. Not by you. that you're not in charge here. That is zayghun. You've deviated. The heart is not sound. It's not on the straight path. It's not focused in achieving what its purpose is on this earth. It's being averted. It's being redirected by something else. And that something else has manifested as a disease in the heart, which means the heart is now diseased. And so understanding of the Quran is withdrawn, because you cannot understand the Quran if your heart is impure. La yamassuhu illa al-mutahharun. None can touch its essence except those who are purified. It goes on both levels, external purity and then internal purity as well. So if your heart is impure and the Quran is from a pure source, the two cannot merge. Yani, you cannot put that which is pure next to that which is impure. They will not merge. They will not come together. They cannot blend. And that which is pure cannot descend to a level of impurity to satisfy that which is impure. No. That which is impure must purify itself and prepare itself to be in meeting with that which is pure. Because there has to be an intimate connection, an intimate link between the knower or the seeker of knowledge and that which he seeks to know. Between the knower and the thing to be known, there has to be an intimate connection. When I say intimate, I'm talking about a sort of love that is transcendental, a bond that is of a spiritual nature, not a material connection. You can hold the Quran next to your chest all day long. It's not going to save you. It's not going to save you. It's not going to save you from your sin. It's not going to save you from your deviations. You can read the text all day long, but if the heart is impure, the Quran is not going to save you. The heart has to be purified. So it has to reach that level of purity so that that intimate connection can be established. So he says, فَأَمَّا الَّذِينَ فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ زَيْغٌ. Those who have got this perversion, this deviation in their hearts, فَيَتَّبِعُونَ مَا تَشَابَهَ مِنْهُ ابْتِغَاءَ الْفِتْنَةِ وَابْتِغَاءَ تَأْوِيلِهِ. They follow only, and if you look here, مَا تَشَابَهَ, what is ambiguous. They leave the muhkam. They leave that which has been foundationally established. They will take only the ambiguous, the metaphoric, the allegoric. They'll take those ones. Why? For two reasons, and both are contingent. To cause fitna and to interpret them per their own whims. And the effect of interpreting on your own whim results in fitna. And that's why I said they are contingent. So either they will do it deliberately to cause fitna, or they will do it to interpret per their own whims, which ultimately is going to cause fitna. You see, this is what, when we talk about all these people with their channels and everything, when they start broadcasting these things, when they have got no foundational knowledge whatsoever. I mean, some of them, I've seen their videos and what, they can't even recite the Quran properly. They cannot pronounce even the letters properly. They don't even have that basic piece there. And they're drawing conclusions from, I don't know, from which universe. There's one guy, I saw his video, and I just had to laugh, because he was looking at Suratul Kahf. And he's going on about Dhul Qarnayn being a space traveler who came, I don't know from which place, and there was a spacecraft, and he saw the sun going down inside a black hole, and he built a barrier which is an asteroid belt. I mean, I don't know what kind of nonsense this person was talking. I said, it sounds interesting. If you were to just remove Dhul Qarnayn and put another character there with a different name, like Captain Marvel or something, right? Or one of those superheroes, whichever one you want to do, you just put that one there, and you know, you could have a best-selling novel. It sounds like a good story, but is it what the Quran is saying? Like, how do you know that is precisely what happened. That is what your Lord is telling you happened. How do you know? How did you establish that truth? I mean, it's more than evident that you're doing this on your own whim, because you had, and here's the thing, they try to do this purely on logic. If you look at my book, The One-Eyed Impostor, there's a chapter in there about deception. In there you'll find a brief disposition. I want to write more about this particular piece, but inshallah, when I get a chance to do it, you'll find a brief disposition on deception, on how it works. And in there, I have given a principle. And that principle is that for a deception to work, it can defy nature. It can defy physics or defy science. It can defy physics, but it cannot defy logic. And so what a deceiver typically tries to do is, if they are unable to prove the scientific rationale of it, they will at the very least establish a logical proposition. They will at least try to throw it out logically, which in itself, anyone who studied logic can look at that and say, you know what, it's riddled with fallacies. But the human mind works on logic. Whether what is produced is logically sound or unsound is a matter of affirmation and negation on that, but we function on logic. And so they try to establish this on logic. The problem with logic, and it's an excellent tool if you know how to use it right, because logic will expand your ability to comprehend, will expand comprehension itself. It will increase your ability to articulate, to formulate arguments, and to make them as sound, logically sound and reasonable as possible, and accurate as well. So logic is an excellent tool if you know how to use it. Many people don't know how to use it because the mind works on logic. You see, you already have logic in you, so you'll still use it. So it's like you were born with a hammer in your hand, but you don't know how to use it. So you just go around banging anything and everything and making a mess out of things because you don't know how to use it, but it's still there as a tool. The problem with logic, and those who don't know how to use it always make this blunder. Every single time, 100%, they will make this blunder. Those who don't know how to use logic, or those whose intellects are not at a higher level, right? It's like, you know, like the fool or the ignoramus who's using logic. They will make this blunder 100% of the time, because logic begins with, like, there is that which precedes the logic, and that's the suppositions. Or if you want to use assumptions, or if you want to use speculations, or whatever it is, it's that which comes before you formulate your syllogism, or before you formulate your argument. It's the suppositions. So they suppose it could be like this. I wonder if that might work. And then they begin to sort of do this kind of a fisheye correlation, you know, because you know, like how fisheye, like the eyes are on the side, so they've got like a blind spot, dead center. So the one eye is seeing symbols on this side, and then the other eye is seeing symbols on that side. But there's a blind spot in the middle. But then the fish, because the fish is stupid, the fish is not intelligent, right, connects that symbol to this symbol and then concludes the truth. So this is what they kind of do, right? From that supposition, I wonder if that might be true. Because there's symbol here, there's symbol here, they start connecting the two. You see, the Quran says Ain Hamia, so Ain Hamia, oh, and then recently scientists discovered black hole, Ainun Hamia, Ainun, right? Then they put the two together. This is how he comes up with his theory. It says the sun was going into a black hole, and Dhul-Qarnayn was a space traveler. He went to the west of the galaxy and the east of the galaxy. Now, that's an example of somebody who also doesn't know the basic science. Because when you talk about east and west and north and south, these cardinal coordinates are confined to the planet Earth. You cannot establish cardinal coordinates outside of the Earth. They don't work. This is why if you look at the coordinating system that they use in space, it's completely different, because there is no up and down in space. These relative terms, the relative words, are based on perspective. It's where you're standing. So up is relative to down based on your orientation, ergo your left is oriented to your right. You're right, you see? And so your north is oriented to the south and your east is oriented to the west. That's as far as where you're standing is concerned. There's no up and down in space. There's no, where do you point up when you're in space? So how do you determine north, east, south, west as far as the Milky Way galaxy is concerned? You can't even think outside the earthly confines, and you want to determine the cardinal coordinates of the Milky Way. And then come up with all these theories that, oh, he was flying on a spacecraft and he came like this, and he, come on, man, be serious. Anyway, so back to the ayah. They do this interpretation based on their own whims. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّ بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. And there's a khilaf between mufassirun regarding the stop. Is there a stop at illallah? Is there a stop there and then warasikhuna fil ilm being a separate sentence, or is the stop at warasikhuna fil ilm stop? So I'll explain in both ways. So let's look at the first way. وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا اللَّهُ وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ stop. And none know their interpretation of these ayat except Allah and those who are firmly rooted or firmly grounded in ilm, in knowledge. And this is based on Ibn Abbas saying, وَأَنَا مِنَ الرَّاسِخِينَ, and I am from the rasikhin. I am among those, because the Prophet ﷺ made a dua that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala grant Ibn Abbas an understanding of the Quran. So that's one understanding of that ayah. And then there's the second one, which if you put a stop after illallah, so وَمَا يَعْلَمُ تَأْوِيلَهُ إِلَّا stop there. And none know the interpretations of these ayat except Allah. وَالرَّاسِخُونَ فِي الْعِلْمِ يَقُولُونَ آمَنَّ بِهِ كُلٌّ مِّنْ عِنْدِ رَبِّنَا. And those who are firmly grounded in knowledge, they say, we believe that all of it is from our Lord. You see, both of these meanings apply, because the rasikhuna fil ilm, even though they might have a certain understanding of an interpretation of an ayah, they still recognize that their interpretation can be wrong. That Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala ultimately knows the truth about this interpretation. And this is why anyone who is firmly grounded in knowledge, whenever they make an interpretation of the Quran, they will say on that, Wallahu a'lam, that Allah knows best. This is just my understanding. This is as far as I can go. And I could be wrong, and I seek Allah's forgiveness. You have to make that acknowledgement. It's not just something you say it on the tongue. You really have to make that acknowledgement deep in your heart, to understand, to realize that you have a limitation here. That you cannot just take the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and then interpret them willy-nilly however you feel like, however it fits you, whichever dictionary you're using to try and find out what those words mean, and then you put them together and you come up with all these theories. You see, then you are among those who zayghun fi qulubihim. In their hearts there is a perversion. And so then he says, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala concludes on that, وَمَا يَذَّكَّرُ إِلَّا أُولُو الْأَلْبَابِ. And so none will be reminded except those who have an understanding, or those who are of understanding. Ulul albab, and it's to do with the lub. Now, it's interesting what he says here. First of all, there is the concept of dhikr, because knowledge in essence is not the accumulation of information. Imam Malik, I said it in the lecture we had last week. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu said, لَيْسَ الْعِلْمِ بِكَثْرَةِ الرِّوَايَاتِ. Knowledge is not the accumulation of different opinions and hadith and narrations and, you know, theories and facts and figures and formulas and all these things. That's not knowledge. That's information. You've gathered information. Knowledge, he says, بَلْ هُوَ نُورٌ قَذَفَهُ اللَّهُ فِي قَلْبِ الْمُؤْمِنِ. It is a light, rather, that Allah places or thrusts into the heart of the believer. It is a nur that Allah puts in the heart. That nur is supposed to illuminate the knowledge itself, which is already there in you. The ultimate knowing, which is a knowledge of mushahada, the recognition of the one. Because human beings, we are creatures who see the one in the many. That's how we work on a normal functionality. Sound psychology. That's how we function. Our minds function by abstracting the one from the many. Conceptual understanding, not particulate understanding or semantics. We don't, if you get hung up on semantics or on information, and if you're stuck there, you will never have a conceptual understanding. And this is why conspiracy theories, they keep on accumulating. One doesn't finish, another one comes up. And all of them, by the way, if you put them all together in a list, there are hundreds. None of them have ever been resolved. None of them have ever been resolved. None of them have ever been proven. None of them have ever been resolved. There are suspicions. Like I said, there are suspicions as to who might be the conspirators. All right? Okay, some facts are in there, accurate facts, undoubtedly. But collectively, the wholesome theory itself has never been proven. Why? Because you're stuck on the semantics. You haven't formulated a conceptual understanding yet. You haven't unified it. You're still stuck on the semantics, and so they keep on accumulating because they remain unsolved. So when something remains unsolved, like an unfinished project, you cast it aside, you take up another one, and so on and so forth. So you just keep accumulating them because you're not able to resolve them. Why? Because the resolution of it is not based on how smart you are. It's not based on how many different sources you can get your information out of. It's not based on how well you can do your research. It is based on how well you understand. And that's why he's referring to the lub here. Ulul albab, he's referring to the lub, which is the deepermost point of intellection in the heart. It is where spiritual intellection takes place. A majority of people who deal with theories are stuck on the lower level of what's known as agent intellection, or that's my term. It's not the same term that is used also in philosophy, because there is something called agent intellection in philosophy as well. This is my term insofar as its application in psychology is concerned. The lower level, which is agent intellection, you're dealing on sensorial acquisition. All your information is coming in through your senses. And you're trying to formulate a rational understanding of all that information. You're stuck there. You still haven't reached active intelligence. You haven't yet broken through from the externalities of things to now go into the internality of it. From the subjectivity of things to objective understanding. And then there is yet another higher level than that, which is spiritual intelligence. That's the level of ulul albab. That's the level that he's talking about. Only these people who have reached that level, and I'm not going to classify myself at that level. I'm also one of those who are struggling to reach that. But those who are at that level, they understand without them having to now get involved with the semantics and the particulars. And I know people like that. Some of them are my teachers. I know people like that who can they can look at a newspaper headline and understand exactly what it's talking about without having to read it. And they'll give you a conclusion from that. And you can read the whole article and you will see their conclusion fit. They are even able to give you the contingency of whatever it is that the article is talking about. They can look at political events happening and give you precisely what the outcomes of certain events are going to be, and they will be accurate. Without them having to do all this analysis and putting all these things together, without them having to do that. Why? Because they are They are not hung up on the particulars. They have got a clearer understanding of their existence in this world and what their purpose entails. And their purpose is not to uncover the conspirators. The Quran has already acknowledged it. There are conspirators and they will keep conspiring. They have been conspiring since the beginning. They will keep on conspiring up until the very end, up until the very hour the trumpet is blown, they will keep on conspiring. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has already acknowledged that. There's no denying. There's nothing new that you're going to come up with when you start coming up with all these theories. There's nothing new that you're going to exemplify. You see, you feel like you have uncovered something grand and something amazing, like, you know, did you know that they're doing this and they're doing that and they're doing that? You feel, because it's new to you. It's new to you, but it's already there. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala knows that this is what they're doing. And yet He allows them to do it. Why? Or did you think that He sent you as the savior? Because a lot of these people then, they end up in this direction, you see. They get, because their psychologies start getting altered. You have to remember something here. Language defines thought. Thought defines worldview. Worldview determines cultivation of your reality. So how you cultivate your reality is entirely contingent on what language input is coming in. If your language is the language of Islam or the language of the Quran, then you know that your worldview will be cultivated in a certain manner. But if your input is conspiracy theory, then your worldview, your reality will be cultivated according to that. And many of these people, they start inhibiting, whether they acknowledge it or not, many of them will not. They will not acknowledge it, but they start inhibiting notions that are preludes to complexes such as the Messiah complex, or the hero complex, or the savior complex, or the chosen one complex or syndrome. They start inhibiting these notions. And many of them start believing themselves to either be a prophet of sorts or to be Jesus incarnate. They do. Even Muslims, there are Muslims who do that. They actually come up and they say, I am the one. I am Nabi Isa. They have, you know, I am the Mahdi. The many of them, you'll see, they have got YouTube channels and everything. They actually convince themselves that I am the one. I am the Messiah. You know? Yeah, look at this character. What is his name? This Qadiani. Yes, thank you. Ghulam Mirza Ahmad. Thank you. This was the character, wasn't it? And look at the damage he caused. And such kind of people, by the way, it actually drives them insane. It does. It drives them insane. Now, insanity does not only entail you going cuckoo, right? You start singing in, you know, or just start making noises, or, you know, jumping up and down. It doesn't only entail that. That's one kind of insanity, madness. There are multiple types of insanity. One kind of insanity is demonic in nature. Manifestation of demonic qualities is a form of insanity because it is contrary to your fitrah. Because your fitrah, that's your sound state. Anything contrary to your fitrah is insanity. Your sound state is your sane state, your state of sanity. Anything contrary to that is insanity. And so a demonic nature is a form of insanity. And these sort of demonic natures, they start going in all these different directions. They start working out these stratagems of how to start bringing in followers. And they think that they're doing the right thing, because never forget, Shaitan is always in the backdrop. He's always pushing his tools this way, that way. The moment he finds somebody who he can easily pull, that person is done. And pulling that person pulls all those thousands of people who follow them. That includes all these YouTubers. And I've seen a lot of them, and I've seen how they they handle, like Quran especially. You know, there's this one, Dr. Hani Achan, with his whole Abrahamic electrocution or something like that. I don't know what method he's invented to interpret the Quran. Abrahamic electrocution or something he calls it. Comes up with all these ridiculous interpretations that anyone who is rational, anyone who is sound, even if they have not studied the Quran, knows that it's faulty. And the way they deceive you, they themselves, they deceive you by putting out all these long videos. These long 2 hours, 3 hours explaining, thing from here and from there and from there. And all their proof, by the way, this is how they present their proof. What is their proof? These random images, somehow stitched together with red color circles and arrows pointing here and exclamation marks, and that is their proof. You see? Or they'll send you a video link on WhatsApp or something. Listen to this brother, he explains it well. Here's the thing. By the way, this is a test for you, if you're into this stuff. Any theory, if it is a sound theory, it should be explainable in a sentence. Or at the very least, in a simple syllogism. It should be condensable, and the sentence of the syllogism should be sound. Any theory. If it is a sound theory, that's how the Quran functions. That's the litmus test. You see? If you can do that, your theory is sound. If you look at all these scientific papers, right? If you look at all these scientific papers, you'll see that they have academic papers, right? When you submit it or you publish it and submit it for peer review, it has at the top, it has an abstract or a summary. That summary is supposed to condense the entire theory before you start going into all the nitty-gritties. There's a majority of scientific papers, academic papers, have not been reviewed or end up not getting reviewed, peer reviewed for years. You know why? Because number one, there are so many papers that are published. Number two, those who do peer review, they're not going to waste time reading each and every page. They will look at the heading. That's the first piece. And then they will read just that one paragraph. That one paragraph has to captivate the one who is reading. And when I say captivate, I'm not talking about, like interesting and amazing and it's grasping and it's epic and it's, it's got these fancy words. And that's not what I'm talking about. That first paragraph has to be logically sound. It has to condense the entire theory in a few sentences. If I can read that and grasp the concept from that, then I know that there is soundness going further. If that first sentence does not even pass the test of logic, that paper is out. No one's going to bother reading it. You see? You coming up with all these 3 hours, 4 hour videos and this and that and here from there and this and that. And so, who are you going to convince with that? This is why nobody takes you seriously, because you're not even following a proper epistemology.